The snow that caps these mountains will melt and run into this river, the San Miguel. It flows into the Dolores and then into the Colorado. Eventually, the snow that falls in Telluride makes its way to Lee's Ferry, where Arizona pulls its share of Colorado River water. That water was the subject of dispute throughout the early 1900s by the 7 states who claimed to have rights. The agreement for the Upper Basin states wasn't reached until 1948, and according to the Upper Colorado River Basin Compact, Arizona gets priority over Colorado residents for the water.
And what that means is even as the rain is falling on their property, that water has an obligation to fulfill downstream.
In other words, Arizona gets first dibs, and those senior water rights have prevented Colorado residents from catching, storing, and using rainwater and snowmelt. In fact, up until statewide legislation passed in 2009, nobody could legally operate a catchment system of any kind.
Even though one individual diversion, one house, would be hardly noticeable in the river, the collective effect of all those diversions would be a noticeable effect.
Now the law says Colorado residents can harvest falling rain and snow, but only if you meet the requirements for a permit.
Oh, it's filled up a lot. That's great.
That's Chris Holstrom, a local Telluride farmer that participated in illegal rainwater harvesting before the 2009 laws passed.
I had several articles written back when I was still illegal, and I actually got a call from the Colbert Report when asking if I was still a water bandit, and it was right after I'd gotten my permit, and I had to say, no, I'm legal now.
Chris has a permit for the catchment that you can see behind me, but most Colorado residents don't fall into that category. Here's why. To have a catchment, you need a rooftop precipitation permit. And to get one of those, you can't receive any water from the city, which means you have to have a well on your property. And to have a well on your property, you have to own over 35 acres of land. Of almost 400,000 residents with active well permits, less than 300 have permits for catchment. Remember, this is because technically, the water Coloradans would be catching belongs to Arizonans. The law says Arizona gets 50,000 acre-feet of water each year from the Upper Basin. Only after that water is distributed can Colorado and other states take their share. It's up to Colorado to make sure the river is replenished, which is why the permits for rainwater harvesting are so strict.
Basically, a very narrow band of people are able to apply for and get a permit. But it's a step.
A step that was necessary for Chris to continue farming when her well stopped supplying her with a consistent amount of water. Because the well isn't always sufficient, Chris depends on the catchment to provide her with enough water for her plants in the greenhouse. But an average citizen wouldn't be able to make use of the snow that falls onto their roof if their water source were to run dry.
Drought, I think, is going to be a way of life from now on in one form or another. And we need to figure out ways that we can still do the things that we need to do with the limited water resource that we have.